Hey guys, and welcome back to Newbie on this channel. I'm Sabi from Contribution. So today I will be doing an extended video showing you guys how to create a ChatGPT plugin. As you might know, because of my previous video, I already created my first plugin for ChatGPT. It is for Newsomatic API, and yeah, it is working. So let me demo it for you. Show me news about Donald Trump. So this will make my plugin work, and ChatGPT will now call Newsomatic API. So here it is. Today I will show you how to do a similar plugin. Actually, I will upload a new plugin during this video, and I will be showing you the entire process. Hopefully it will work from the first attempt, as I already learned a lot from the process of creating this first plugin, the Newsomatic API. So as you can see, ChatGPT used Newsomatic API plugin now to get news about Trump. It shows actually the titles, some excerpts of the articles, some nice read more buttons, and also these cards with the articles are here at the bottom, which is actually really nice. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start creating our new plugin. For this, I clean up here my stuff, and this is the documentation for the ChatGPT plugin creation. I will link this in this video's description, but now let me show you what actually ChatGPT plugins are. So there are some requirements for building your ChatGPT plugin. So the first requirement is that you need to have an API which you own and control, which you can actually teach ChatGPT to use it. So this is the first requirement of plugins at the moment. This might change in the future, but currently this is the single most important requirement, that you need to have an API that is functional, and this API should be linked directly to ChatGPT, so it is able to call it in requests when users type in prompts which resemble the needs to call the API. So ChatGPT actually thinks of calling this API, and it does, and it gets its results from it. So similarly, this happens also in my example which I showed you. I typed in get me news about something, and if ChatGPT sees that I want news, it automatically calls Newsomatic API, and it gets latest news for the keyword that I refer to. Okay, so now let me show you how I will try to create a plugin for HeadlessBrowserAPI. So HeadlessBrowserAPI is a scraper API which uses JavaScript, and it renders the websites and web pages, and yeah, it is a really cool scraper API, and I control this API fully, so I own it, and because of this I can add it to ChatGPT also. Why it is needed to own the API? Because the ChatGPT requires you, when you create your plugin, to upload files to the storage of the website which you want to teach ChatGPT to use the API from. So if, for example, I want ChatGPT to teach the usage of the API found on HeadlessBrowserAPI.com, I need to have upload access to this file, to this domain, and I need to upload some files to this domain. So this is why it is required you to have the API on your hand. So if you don't have an API right now and you have an idea, you can ask a freelancer to build it, or yeah, if you have knowledge of coding knowledge and knowledge of how to build APIs, you can build it yourself. But this is the first step. You will need to have an API. After you have an API, all you need to do is teach ChatGPT how to use the API, and this is actually the process of creating the ChatGPT plugins. All you need to do is teach ChatGPT that, hey, this is how you call my API, this is how you this is when you should call this API, and this is how you should interpret the results. And this is all. As simple as it sounds, it is not quite as simple, but actually it does not involve coding at all. And yeah, all you need to do is build some files that will teach ChatGPT how to interact with your API. So yeah, this is what we will try to do in today's video, and let us get started. So I have here an example request to Newsomatic API. You will see here the API key visible in the request here. Don't bother using this API key because I created it only for the purpose of this video, and I will delete it afterwards. So yeah, this is just demoing the functionality of the API which I add to ChatGPT, and yeah, as I said, don't bother using it. You can try, but it will not work as it will be deleted after the video. Okay, so let's get straight into creating the ChatGPT plugin, shall we? So for this, the requirement also is to have ChatGPT Plus subscription, as you will not have access to ChatGPT API otherwise. Another requirement is that you should have access to ChatGPT plugins. You need to be a ChatGPT plugin developer. There is a waitlist which you need to subscribe, and after they approve your request, they will grant the plugin developer right for your ChatGPT account, and afterwards you can create plugins. So after everything from what I said until now is done, we can start creating our ChatGPT plugin. So for this, it is straightforward. We need to create only two files. So one file is very simple to create, and the other file is a bit more complex to create, and the second file will have more issues during you will see that especially if you're not familiar with creating OpenAPI files, then yeah, there might be some issues here, but I will show you tips and tricks on how to get past them, even if this is the first time you do this. Okay, so first thing first, you will need to get the ai-plugin.json file. It is linked in this video description. You will be able to download both of these example files, and you will be able to edit them and use them for your own projects. Just don't forget to edit them, as these are currently set for my own API versions. Okay, so from my testing, the APIs that I use, the best is to allow the APIs to have the authentication directly in the header. So it is important that if you don't want to allow full access and unrestricted access to the API for ChatGPT, and you want users to actually add in an API code in the settings when they install the plugin. So if you want to make users add an API code when they install the plugin, you will need to add support to your API for post requests. This is from my testing. ChatGPT currently does not support that well GET requests, or at least I did not manage to set up GET requests with ChatGPT, only post requests to the API. And also the authentication header needs to be a bearer token in the authentication header for the API that you own. So keep in mind, this is a requirement. Okay, so now let's go and check the ai-plugin.json file. So this is it. This is example file for my Newsomatic API plugin that I created yesterday, and today I will be editing this and adapting it to the new API, to HeadlessBrowserAPI, that I also want to add today. So schema version, keep in mind you will find this file in this video's description, and let's go ahead and edit it to be as we wish it. So name for model, Newsematic API. In this case, it will be called Headless Browser API. Also, the name needs to be changed. Description for model. So description for model needs to be very complex and not too long also, as this will be used by the model to understand when to call your API. So this line is very important, as if you don't add here a good description for your model, for your AI, for the model, then the AI will not know when to call your API exactly, and it might miss some cases when it should call the API you add based on the prompts that users enter. So in this case, I want to be simple, straightforward, and let's use ChatGPT here to create our model. So for example, let's write here, let's copy the text here, the text that I have here on my description of my API, paste it in the ChatGPT prompt, and let's write here, write a detailed description for headless browser API. Let's add more details, also some here are important, these are also important, so let's copy this and add this also in the description. Also, free rotating proxies, it's something that you should be aware of. And okay, so let's add here, and let's instruct ChatGPT that we need this for the description for model field for a ChatGPT plugin. Write a detailed description for Headless Browser API for my API called, okay, I need this for the field for a new ChatGPT plugin. Okay, and hit enter, and yeah, it is a bit promotional here, but we can cut out the promotional parts, or even tell ChatGPT that don't make it promotional. So we can stop generating, don't make it promotional. So as you will see, I will be using ChatGPT quite a lot in here, and let's hope we will get good results with it. So Headless Browser API is a feature-rich and web scraping designed API designed to address the changes expected in JavaScript and their dynamic content. Okay. Write only the key features in the description. Keep it as short and descriptive as possible. Okay, let's see what we will get from this prompt. So write only the key features in the description and keep it as short and descriptive as possible. So this is important, as we have only a limited number of characters here for the description for models. Yeah, so it seems that we might be better off by writing our own, because it seems that we went a bit off with the description, the initial description that we entered here. So let's think of something like Headless Browser API is a web scraping service which will allow users to any website and extract also JavaScript generated content from it. Write a detailed description about this. Okay. So this first line should be okay in this case, and we can add this into the description for model and add to it some more details. So is a web scraping service designed to enable users to efficiently extract information from websites, content generated by JavaScript. This API can be used to scrape and extract data from any website. It supports grabbing, so you will see that I will be using as many keywords for which characterize my API as possible. So grabbing, scraping, extracting. It supports grabbing the article or post content without it supports grabbing the full article or post content. Okay, so let's leave it like this. And let's write a description for human. Keep in mind that this should be shorter. So headless browser API enables ChatGPT to access the web and scrape any website. Okay. Now we have this authentication part, so keep in mind that I recommend that you use a bearer token in the authorization header. So this is important. Set up your API to use a bearer token and validate the bearer token, as this is the only method I used so far. I saw that ChatGPT plugins also support the direct authentication method for users, the OAuth method. I did not test this so far. You can go ahead and check it if you wish. I used the bearer token so far. So here we have the API. This is static, so don't modify this. Also, this should not be modified. Your API should be modified to use bearer tokens. Also, the API type is OpenAPI, and the URL is the location where the other file will be found. So you will see that here are two files, and this is the location of the second file, the openapi.yaml. So in our case, it will be HeadlessBrowserAPI.com, well known. Okay, so this is the root of our domain, and logo URL. This should be the icon we will use for our fav icon. I will check on this because I will need to get this. I do this off screen as I don't want to show you guys this exactly. So let me search for my icon here, and I think I found it. Yep, just a minute. As okay, so my logo URL is this. Now contact email is coderevolution.ro. Legal info, this should be some privacy policy or terms of service URL from the website which hosts the API. So in this case, this is the privacy policy page from here. Okay, so we have the legal info, logo, URL for the other file. So we will have to upload the other file that we will be creating soon in this location. So don't forget about this. And also authentication will be bearer. OpenAI also supports multiple types of authentication. Let me show you this. So authentication here, and you can also set none for authentication type, service level, which still has a bearer token, but it only has limited access, user level, which has the current user level. This is which I am using here, and users enter their API key and it will be passed to the API in the bearer authorization header, or auth, which I talked about earlier, and this will be with client URLs, authorization URLs and tokens. But this will be, if you want, you can try to set this up also. Okay, so now let me go ahead and upload this file to my server. I will do this also off screen. So first of all, let's upload this file, and it is already up. Now let's check well known. So this is the location where you need to upload the file. So in the .well-known folder, this is where you need to upload your files. So the AI plugin.json is here and available. So don't forget to test if the file is uploaded correctly. You will see that the privacy policy, everything is available here. Okay, now the next step is to generate our second file, which, as I told you earlier, is a bit trickier to do, as this will be the definition of your API, and this will actually teach ChatGPT how to use and how to interpret the results of your API. So this file is also found in this video's description. Go ahead and use it. It's okay. You can edit it as you wish. So we will be using this, and let's edit it in our case. So let's modify this to our API name, HeadlessBrowserAPI. I see that they like to keep titles simple, so you can use the name of the API directly in the title without any extra words like I had here. So remove this, as they like to keep titles simple. So OpenAPI version 3 is okay. Version 1 of this file, description, the Newsomatic API. So we can get the description from our previous editing. So we can get actually the description for model, which is longer. We can get this and add it here in the description field. So servers. So servers, this is the URL of the server where the API is currently located. Be sure to have a HTTPS server, as HTTP simple servers will not be as liked by ChatGPT plugins. So this is how you need to add your URLs. And now we need to add paths of our endpoints, which will be public for ChatGPT. So for start, I have here my documentation for HeadlessBrowserAPI. And for beginning, I want to publish the Puppeteer endpoint. In other instances, I will add also the screenshot endpoint, as I have here a screenshot endpoint. This endpoint can, or API node, can make screenshots of sites, and this will be really nice to have in ChatGPT as a plugin. So you can type simply in ChatGPT, hey ChatGPT, show me a screenshot of google.com and ChatGPT should come up with a screenshot like this. So this will be a future version of what I will be doing, but today let's start with adding the Puppeteer API node, which actually only scrapes sites. It will not do screenshots, it scrapes sites and it returns the code which it scrapes. So I thought of adding only the readability version in ChatGPT, as the readability will actually only extract the readable content of the site. So if a blog post is targeted or if an article is targeted, the readability node will extract the readable part from that site and pass only the readable part to ChatGPT, not all the scripts, the headers and other parts from the scrape site, which is really cool in this case because the AI might not be able to parse the entire HTML code of the site. So let's go ahead and try to set this up. The next thing that we need to set is the path. So the path is the part of your API which comes after the domain. So the path will be this. So before the arguments of your API call, this is the path. So let's copy and paste it here. API scrape version 1 Puppeteer. So this is something that you want to do. Also, a side note here, it is recommended that you create endpoints on your API directly for the AI. So for example, in here you will have this endpoint for users and you can create an endpoint in your API which will be the AI endpoint. This is just to separate the functionality of the AI and the functionality of users, which you already might have. So this is a nice thing to have, but in my case I currently don't have the time to build this endpoint, although it would require only a couple of minutes. So let's go ahead and start with the endpoint, which is also public for users, and let's teach ChatGPT to communicate with this API endpoint and go ahead using it. So list latest news from around the world. This is the summary. So scrape any website and extract its readable content. Okay, so this will be the short summary of our endpoint here. And operation ID, this is some ID that you can set for your operation. So for example, let's scrape website. This is an example operation ID. You can add here anything. And request body, require true, content, application JSON, schema, you can leave everything here unchecked, unchanged until here. So properties, these are the parameters of your API. And here we have some approaches. So first approach is you go in and edit all these manually yourself, or you actually ask ChatGPT to do it for you. So for this, let's go ahead and clear our conversation here and start a new chat. And what I will be showing you today is that I can ask ChatGPT to write my openapi.yaml file for me. So let's tell ChatGPT something like this. I have the below API, write for me the openapi.yaml file. Be sure to use also the, so you need to ask it to be sure to use the request body attribute when defining API parameters. As from my testing, if you don't add the request body attribute, ChatGPT plugins, your ChatGPT plugin will fail to compile on ChatGPT's part and it cannot be added. So this is some requirement, some weird requirement from ChatGPT's part, as you might define this parameter also in other ways in this file, but ChatGPT likes only this type of defining currently. So yeah, this is a current requirement. You can check if other ways are also supported in the future, but currently this is how you can do it. Okay, so now after I added this instruction, let's copy the documentation from my site here and let's write it like this. So okay, API parameters, API result. Okay, so we can go ahead and copy the entire thing from here, and because GPT-4 has this large content window, I think we might actually have success with this using Puppeteer for web scraping. So API node is using Puppeteer for web scraping any website. Okay, let's edit this text a bit so it is a bit more user friendly. We will see that it adds the endpoint, sample call, API parameters. Let's add here a hashtag also just to be sure that we differentiate this, and let's go start it. Now we will see that ChatGPT will think a bit, and if everything is working okay, you will see that our file will get generated. And yeah, you will see that we will get a GET request, which you can change this to post, as so far I did not have success with GET request adding, as I mentioned earlier. So the parameters are added like this, and I think I got to the end of the content window. Now let's write that be sure to use the request body attribute to define parameters. Okay, so description, path, post, summary, request body. As you can see, we will get the request body now, which is okay. And we are getting our file generated. So be sure to double check this before adding it. Modify to accept post request with JSON instead of a GET request. Okay. So it is now a post request, so we can go ahead and start using this. So this API is Puppeteer works with many website. Headless browser to render, okay. So this is the path. This is the path that we also have. Scrape a website and get rendered HTML content. Scrape images that is readable content, okay. Required true properties API key. So in this case we don't need an API key, as the API key will be passed in the request headers, not like in my current documentation, which states that the API key needs to be passed in the URL. So we can skip this. Now let's go to the URL. So let's start and modify, or even better, we can go ahead and copy this entire stuff and simply add it here like this. So instead of all this part, which is from my previous API, just double checking if I selected things correctly. Yeah, and here it is. Additional properties can be added here. Okay, thank you for this. URL, custom user agent. So we don't actually want ChatGPT to modify some of these parameters. So the most important parameter is the URL. So we want ChatGPT to pass the URL only. And this, in my current plugin version, I don't actually want to use any of this because ChatGPT does not have proxies, for example. So if it passes the URL which should be scraped, it is actually pretty nice. Okay, we don't need local storage, we don't need any additional JavaScript code to be executed with the scraped HTML. We don't need captchas to be solved. Actually, we need readability. So this is something that we should add. So actually, we can ask ChatGPT to do this for us. Add a new parameter to the above JSON file called readability, which needs to be set for all API requests you do to on. Let's see how it will handle this. So in this case, it should return something very similar to our previous JSON file, only it should add a new parameter here. So let's see, readability string default on. Okay, and here it is. We can use this really good, so with small editing only. So let's get, and be sure to respect aligning here, as it is very important to align your stuff here correctly. Okay, set the parameters to on to auto detect and return only the readable content from the scraped HTML page, default on, and we don't have here off, so only on is accepted. And in the required fields, which will be under the properties, so be sure to check aligning here. So under the properties, we will have the required URL, and also another requirement will be the readability, which needs to be set to on. Okay, so source properties, this needs to be changed a bit, and this is the security scheme, which is the bearer token. This should be left by you also unchanged. And we have here the responses part, which is important just to allow ChatGPT to parse our API responses correctly. So keep in mind that the responses part should be under the request body, so keep in mind that you should respect the alignation of this. So we should check where our request body was. So components, I think I missed the, yeah, so it seems that I added here stuff in the wrong location. I will be fixing this right away. So let's add actually what we copied right now, so the response part, and let's remove the old response because this was from my previous API declaration, and this is my new response. Let's check it if it is correct. So the number of API calls remaining, URL, the URL it was scraped, HTML, the scraped HTML content with JavaScript rendered. Okay, and error, the error message containing the reason of the failure. This seems to be okay for my case. And very important, let's fix up the things that I messed up earlier. So I added here incorrectly these parameters. So let's check where I added these parameters incorrectly. Actually, these are the ones that I added incorrectly, but let's go ahead better and copy these directly from ChatGPT here, and we will be able to replace them up here in the API course part, where we have URL, HTML, and or no, URL. This is the request body. So this should be added in the request body in the URL part. Okay, so URL API key is not needed in this case, but the readability is needed. The readability should have only the on value. No need for proxies, timeouts, user presses, custom user agents. Keep only URL and readability and use them. And this should be enough for ChatGPT to call our APIs. Also, these components define how our API calls will look. So this, you can use this, but it is optional. In my case, I don't need to use any of this for this actual API. You can only leave the security scheme, because this is important, as this will define the security type for your API, which is a bearer token and the HTTP bearer token. So this will be okay. So let's go ahead and check if things will work out using this simple file. So as you can see, I used most of the part to define this YAML file, ChatGPT, and let's hope that actually it will work. So let's see what will be the results. So for now, let's delete or we can keep this conversation and let's start anew. Go to plugin store. Let's remove this plugin for now, as I don't need it right now. And they added a plugin dev tool recently, but it does not seem to do much so far. You will need to click on develop your own plugin. This is important. But before this, I actually almost forgot to upload my YAML file. So be sure to upload your YAML file also on your server next to the ai-plugin.json. So keep in mind that the path on your server should be where here it is. So the path should be like this. The domain of your site .well-known folder, and in this case it will be openapi.yaml, and it is not there for so OpenAPI, sorry. So this is it, openapi.yaml. Don't forget the P from here, as it is also important. Okay, so we have here our full file. Now we can go to ChatGPT, and you saw that I clicked on the plugin store, develop your own plugin. My manifest is ready, hopefully, and all you have to do here is add your domain. So in this case, I think that it will work also with W, as my other domain was added. Yeah, it will be working also with this www. So let's enter HeadlessBrowserAPI.com and click find manifest file. And if everything will be working well, and in this case things seem to have worked well from the first. So the manifest file is here and working. The Headless Browser API is recognized with description, with full specs. So far so good, guys. Ready to install. Install for me, unverified plugin, continue, and you will see that they ask for the access token now at installation. So here you will need to get your API key and actually find the tab where you were using this, paste the API key here and click install plugin. And if everything works as expected, which I am really curious to do so, you have already installed the plugin and activated. Let's go and let's find a website to scrape. So for example, let's scrape, what should we scrape? TechCrunch. Yes, let's go and scrape TechCrunch. Let me find you an article from TechCrunch which we can use. And here it is, an example TechCrunch article with some text. And let me see if our ChatGPT plugin will handle this. So tell me, what is this article about? And add the link to it. So let us see if ChatGPT will handle our request, and it is calling Headless Browser API, and here's an error. Let me try again. And yeah, it would be too good to be true to work from the start, and we can debug our requests here. So URL, okay, error, no URL provided, please set the URL request parameter. Okay, so it seems that we have an issue in our API here, as it is not detecting the URL sent. So I will be going ahead and check on this in my API and get back to this soon. Okay, so I am back. I think I managed to fix my API, so let's try this again. And I'm not sure if it will work still, but let's hope for the best. Yeah, shall we? And once again it is breaking, and okay, it is still with this error. So I will pause this again and check on this again, and let's hope for the best. Okay, so I am back here in action. As you can see, I fixed the issue with the file. It turned out that it was a issue with this schema file. So the most important problem was that I deleted the schemas part from here, and it turns out that you cannot just delete the schemas part from the end from here from components, even though I did not have any schemas here, because the source from here is not used anymore, as it is used in the previous openapi.yaml file. In this case I did not use any schemas, but it turns out that you cannot delete schemas. So I left in a dummy schema here. So this file will be linked also in this video's description. Go ahead guys and check it, and you will be able to reuse it. Also, everything from the other parts are mostly intact. I changed it also to the parameters part. So as you can see, I'm no longer using the schema part from here, which used the request body. Although at the beginning of the video I know that I said that I did not manage to make it work otherwise, but this was valid, it seems, only for Newsomatic API. But in case of Headless Browser API, I did not manage to make it work with the request body part, so I wrote it like this. So in the post part, write summary, operation ID, and directly parameters. You can write name of the parameter URL in the query, require true, description, schema, and here it is. And also I said that this parameter needs to be set always to on to make sure that the plugin, the ChatGPT plugin, uses only the readability part, as I told you earlier. Okay, so you can check if there are other changes before I pause the video, but there should not be other changes in this part, only the schema that I added, this schema part which was needed, and I changed the YAML file from request body to these parameters, which is more simple and straightforward, and it seems that it is actually working in this case. So what I did to update my plugin is that I delete the conversation from here, go to plugin store, develop your own plugin. My manifest is ready, and you will need to enter the domain which you entered previously. So headlessbrowserapi.com, enter it once again, click find manifest file, and this is how you update your plugin on ChatGPT right now, because they don't refetch this manifest file automatically. You need to refetch it manually. So the manifest is okay, the OpenAPI file is also valid. We can go next, install it, continue. Don't forget to grab your API key as said before. So paste, install, and now we can go ahead and check this. So let's try with our example article from TechCrunch here. Okay, so now let's start testing this. So what is this article about? And all we should do is grab the article URL, which is this, and paste it directly in here. So we will be using the Headless Browser API ChatGPT plugin is checked, and let's see what we'll get here. You will see that processing times in this case might be a bit longer, as Headless Browser API uses Puppeteer instances which are launched on server part, which take up more time to process, and they download the scrape page. Also the API uses proxies, which further increase the waiting time because the proxies download the pages. Also, one more thing, it will extract the readable part automatically. As you can see, the article is about Apple's preparations to open its first retail store in India, and if we check, Apple already is opening its first retail store in India. So we got here a nice article summary and inspired by Kali Pili, and we can find this name. Here it is. So yeah, it also parses the content of the article, and I take this as a great success for our Headless Browser ChatGPT API, Headless Browser API ChatGPT plugin. So yeah, it took a while for this to process, but it seems that it is okay now, and the plugin is fully functional now, and it is ready to be sent for review for ChatGPT. If you got accepted as a ChatGPT developer, now you can go ahead and click on that little link that you got in email when you got accepted as a ChatGPT developer, where OpenAPI tells you that, hey, you can submit your ChatGPT plugins for review, and afterwards they will review your plugins and they will not be unverified anymore. So this will be a good thing, and I think that afterwards they will appear also publicly or something like this. Anyway, they will not have some restrictions that they currently have, because only 15 people can install this unverified plugin so far. Okay, So yeah, this was the tutorial video for today. I hope it was useful for you guys, as yeah, it had some issues which I tackled, and don't forget, everything is linked in this video description. I will link also Headless Browser API in this video description just for you guys to check it. Okay, so this is the current state of ChatGPT plugins. This is how you create ChatGPT plugins. Keep in mind, all you do when you create your plugin is teach ChatGPT how to talk with your API that you want it to make the connection to, and basically this is all. Okay, so I hope this video was informative. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching this until the end. Until next time, bye bye.